I write and edit at IndiaSpend, and I've been here since 2016 now. And before that, I used to write for an organization called the Wall Street Journal. How I got to journalism is I was always interested in doing this. So I have studied journalism in college, but there isn't any one path to journalism per se. There are a lot of people who formally study journalism, and others who just start off reporting and then learn on the job. What is really important is that you have a inclination to report, talk to people, find out the truth, and report the facts as they're happening. There are people who would study specific beats. For instance, somebody might have studied the law and they'd want to cover courts or what happens in India's judiciary. There are others who study economics and want to write about business or economic policy in India. So basically, after I studied, I started working at the Wall Street Journal. And then I decided to study development. I went to the US. I started studying the theories of development, the concepts of development, how the experiences of projects on the ground are. And then when I came back, I joined IndiaSpend, where I could combine both of these loves that I had. One was, of course, journalism, and the other was writing about issues of public interest, health, sanitation, education, environment, gender, and so on. So if you read our stories, they are focused on all of these issues that matter to the common man, matter to the citizen of India. And the work of a journalist, of course, is very interesting, but it is also very challenging. And I thought I'd take you back to a day in 2016 when I was in Mehsana in Gujarat, reporting on tuberculosis. What I was doing was I was reporting on a pilot project which was trying to include patients who take care in the private sector in a government program to provide free medicine so that people, even if they're not able to afford medicines, they're able to access treatment and as well as diagnostics for TB. So I'm in this TB center in Gujarat in Mehsana, and I'm talking to a TB official. And he tells me that there's a person in who's from a nomadic tribe who's part of their pilot project, and a couple of days they've not been able to locate him because he's a nomad. They keep changing their settlement, and he tells me they're going to go out looking for him because they've got new you and help you look for this person and see how you do it. So he agrees. And this is when I jump on the back of a motorcycle with this photographer, a local photographer who's helping me out, and just follow him to wherever they're going, looking through these hutments of temporary settlements till we basically find this person. And why this is special to a journalist's job is because a lot of other people would have thought, we don't know where they're going to take us, what is going to happen over there, should we really be going with people we've just met earlier in the day. But for a journalist, such a scenario becomes a gold mine because you're able to see how something is happening on the ground, and you're able to see it with your own eyes and able to find these stories that are otherwise very difficult to locate. Otherwise, how would I find this person who's a part of a nomadic tribe and is also part of a government program and getting treatment through it? And of course, this story is available on IndiaSpend freely for everybody to read. Then there was this other story I was writing about recently during the COVID-19 pandemic on education. Everyone knows that schools were shut for almost 2 years, and a lot of children missed out on education because they didn't have access digitally, or this, of course, like going to school in person is not the same thing as seeing a screen and talking to somebody or learning from a teacher on the screen. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to talk to children and get their sense of what they've been going through and what they want should happen or should change in how they're being taught. So I went out in rural Rajasthan, semi-rural Rajasthan, and I went to areas around schools as well as just villages that I, went through driving and then stopped and then spoke to people. Now, what was interesting over here was very often children are reluctant to talk to strangers. So I had to put children at ease and convince them to tell me their stories. The other challenge that I faced was often parents and the elders in the family want to answer for children or they want to push the child to answer in a certain way, to make sure, that the child was saying what they wanted to and not what an elder wanted them to say. It took time, but it was really rewarding because the children did trust me, and a lot of them spoke to me quite freely. Some even let me take photos, talk to their friends, and that all of those stories of those children is also up online for everyone to read. This is what a reporter does, going out in the field, finding out the truth, combining that, especially at IndiaSpend, we focus a lot on data. So we look up government surveys, other data that's available publicly, research, and combine that with our reporting to give readers a complete picture of what's going on. So that people can understand not just from what we're saying, but also from sources such as surveys, academics, and research as to what the truth is. Now, an editor's role is different from a reporter's. Um, it is the editor who helps the story take shape even before the reporter goes out to report. It starts right when there's an idea, somebody has an idea for a story, to report on a story. They test whether the article holds promise, whether the idea holds promise, whether it makes any sense, whether it's new, whether it'll be interesting to a reader, and then they help shape the final story. So a reporter will come back with all the reporting, send a draft, and then it's the editor who makes it look what you see on your screen or in the newspaper. Finally, they make sure that all the questions that a reader will have are answered in the story. Whether the story will grip the reader's attention, whether the reader will be able to easily understand what's going on. So sometimes what happens is stories that don't match the standard of an organization, they die at the editing table, while other stories will get a new look, a new life. And that is sort of what a day in the life of a newsroom is like. Now, what sets IndiaSpend apart and the work that we do versus, say, a large mainstream media house, and why I choose to work here rather than a large mainstream media house is very simply put, two things. One is basically independence, and one is the focus on the kinds of issues that we write about. So we have the independence to report on what we want, given that it's, of course, of public interest, without fearing for what might happen later on in terms of response from industry, response from government, etc. Given, of course, that our reporting, our work, our research and analysis is solid and based on the truth. That's, of course, what all journalism should be like. But unfortunately, nowadays, a lot has changed in journalism, with TV anchors shouting on news channels, people chasing numbers and views rather than public interest journalism. So our focus is completely on that. We do not have any agenda. It's very clear what our sources are. So if you go to our story, you can actually see the links. And often that's where a lot of the questions for India Fact Quiz come from. And nowadays there is a lot of misinformation and sort of half-baked stories coming out, and we try to stay away from that and give in-depth reporting. And on those lines, that the prize for today's quiz is also a book on the information chaos in the world, especially around the pandemic, and what journalism can do to regain the truth, the trust of the people or of the viewer. The book's name is News and How to Use It, What to Believe in a Fake News World, and it's written by a career journalist, Alan Rusbridger. For 20 years, he was the editor at the British newspaper and, of course, website, The Guardian. He started jobs at local newspapers before he started writing for The Guardian, and then made his way up, launching the weekend magazine for The Guardian, and this is his third book. Currently, he is the chair of the Reuters Institute for the Study of Journalism and also serves on the New York-based Committee to Protect Journalists. Now, the Committee to Protect Journalists, or the CPR, also keeps a record of journalists killed or attacked because of their work while they were working. And since 1992, when they started recording these incidents, they found around 1,442 journalists who were killed either because of their work or while they were working. Of these, 58 deaths were in India. And since in 2021, 293 journalists have been imprisoned because of their work worldwide, 7 in India. Now, this shows that the work that journalists can do can often be dangerous, especially for those who cover conflicts, who are investigating corruption, scams, government mismanagement, and apathy, which is a key role that journalists play. Yet journalism, despite all of these dangers, is very, very important, which is why like journalists do the job they do. They are the fourth pillar of our democracy, keeping a check on and on the work of the other three pillars, which are the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. They keep their work, make it transparent to the public, make them accountable to the public. And it is key that a country is safe for its journalists to report from. And that, of course, a journalist reports the truth with integrity and with sensitivity about those that they're reporting on. So that's basically journalism in a nutshell. And um, let's perhaps go and test your facts and your knowledge of the truth with our quiz on press and press freedom. I'm going to start sharing my screen so that all of you can see the questions. Just a second, I think. All right, I think you all can see my screen now. And all right, so I see quite a few of you waiting for the quiz. You'll have to put the game pin in Kahoot to be able to start this quiz. The game pin is 2162773, as you can see on your screens. And I also see that there's a question for me, how somebody can become a journalist after their graduation. So yes, so I would suggest that you, if there is any particular newspaper that you want to write for, you can always start off as a trainee journalist. And perhaps a local newspaper would be the best place to start off. And you can start writing on local issues, events that are happening in your city. Once you reach out to the editor of the local newspaper, they'll be able to also help you out and give you suggestions of how you can start off. But the first step, of course, is to read a lot of newspapers and decide where you want to work, and then start writing to them and as to why you'd be a good person to join and report on the happenings in your city. Hope that helps. And we have a couple of people still joining in. So we can wait for a couple more minutes if other people are joining in. The pin, I think somebody's asking for the pin. The pin's 2162773. And you can put that in Kahoot to join. All right, and we're starting now. So ready, 3, 2, 1. And of course, we have some poll questions first. Where do you go to the news for? Which is the medium that you use to get your news, your daily news? The options, of course, newspapers, Google, social media, TV. That's interesting. So most people do read newspapers or go to newspaper apps and websites. Quite a few go on Google. There are some, of course, who use social media and some who use TV. Just a tip. So when you get news through social media, it's always good to go to the actual source, the news website, and then verify that that actually is true information coming from a reliable source rather than just something on social media. All right, so the next question. Your thoughts on press freedom in India? All right, time's up. Right, so a lot of interesting answers. Of course, it's necessary, people have said, that it is under attack. It's an illusion, somebody said that could be true. Then, of course, there's some say there's no freedom at all. I would say there is a little freedom. It's some organizations are more free than others, of course. So that's interesting. All right, next question. And now comes the actual quiz, and let's see who answers first and who answers right. This is a double point question. The Indian journalist who won the Pulitzer Prize for feature photography in 2018. The options are Arindam Mukherjee, Danish Siddiqui, Gitika Talukdar, and Rana Ayub. All right, so the answer, of course, is Danish Siddiqui, and a lot of you got this right. And he actually received the Pulitzer Prize for feature photography as part of the Reuters team for documenting the Rohingya refugee crisis. Unfortunately, Siddiqui was killed last year while covering a clash between Afghan security forces and the Taliban fighters at a border crossing in Pakistan. Some of his powerful work was during the COVID-19 crisis, which I think a lot of us remember in our minds. Of that is that of the mass cremations that happened during COVID-19. And now let's see the scoreboard. Okay, so Isha's on top, and she's been able to answer fast and right. The second is Swati, then there's Paras, Adit, and Mayur Panchamya. All right, so let's go to the next question. The Indian journalist who received the Mux Award in 2019. And the options are Faye D'Souza, Ravish Kumar, Pranoy Roy, and Barkha Datta. And time's up. Great. A lot of people have gotten this one right too. And of course, Ravish Kumar is a journalist with NDTV India. Moving on to the next question. Swati is gained now, and she's first, and Mayur is second, followed by Adit. Right now, basically, Anuj is the highest climber who's climbed up 9 places. Great job, Anuj. The next question is, which is the safest country in the world for journalists? Liechtenstein, Finland, Norway, and the US are your 4 options. This one, not too many people got this one right. So I'll tell you a little about this. So this is basically the classification done by Reporters Without Borders that puts together this list of countries and how they are for press freedom and safety for journalists, etc. And they basically evaluated countries on the basis of the ability to identify, gather, disseminate news and information with journalistic methods and integrity without the danger of bodily harm or psychological or emotional stress. And they found that Liechtenstein is the safest for journalists. Let's see the scoreboard now. Some movement on the scoreboard. Swati is still on the top, but now we have Dipankar on second and Nicey on number 3. All right, next question. Which was the first English language newspaper published on the Indian subcontinent? Your options are Times of India, The Hindu, Bombay Samachar, and Bengal Gazette. Great. This is another question that a lot of you have been able to answer correctly. So the Bengal Gazette is the right answer. It was started in 1779. And what's interesting, the newspaper actually started incorporating Indo-English words into its writings as time passed, basically getting impacted by the local language and the local usage. It was founded by Irishman James Augustus Hickley in Calcutta, which was the capital of British India at that time. Let's see how the scoreboard looks. We have Swati on number 1, Dipankar on number 2, and Mayur following after that. Then we have Adit and Paras who are close, very close behind. Next question. In India, whom is the media regulated by? Is it the Supreme Court of India, the Indian Parliament, the Press Council of India, or is the press supposed to be self-regulated? Right. So I see that not too many people answered this correctly. So I'll explain a little bit. The press in India is supposed to be self-regulated. The Press Council of India is a statutory body, but it does not have powers in the sense that it can enforce anything. Whatever it says is more in nature of guidelines than a enforceable norm, which is why we say that the media in India is self-regulated. Of course, there's checks and balances that come within the organization, and the government tries to exert pressure, but it's supposed to be self-regulated. Right. So now Dipankar's on number 1, followed by Swati and Adit. And Domi's been the highest climber who's gone up 15 places through this question. Moving on to the next question. Double points. India's ranking on the World Press Freedom Index 2022. 180, 150, 100, or 142? Right, a lot of you got this right, and it is 150. What is sad that India's ranking has gone down from 133 in 2016 to 150 this year, on this index made by Reporters Without Borders, which basically looks at the freedom that journalists, news organizations, and its netizens have in disseminating news and opinion. How does the scoreboard look now? Dipankar still retains the first spot, followed now by Adit and Paras. And Abhilash this time has been the highest climber, moving up 10 spaces. Moving on to the next question. Again, a double point question. The only state in India to have a law protecting the rights of the media. Your options: Maharashtra, Kerala, Karnataka, and West Bengal. All right, a lot of you got this right again. And yes, Maharashtra has a law which says that it's for the prevention of violence against media persons, and it was passed in 2019. Okay, so Adit has a streak with 4 correct answers, and he's now on first position, followed by Paras, Dipankar, Aniket, and Tanushri. Moving on to the next question. This leader of the Indian freedom movement started the newspaper Mook Nayak. The options: Mahatma Gandhi, B.R. Ambedkar, Lokmanya Tilak, and Motilal Nehru. That's correct. 22 people have got this one right. B.R. Ambedkar. It was started by B.R. Ambedkar in 1920, and its name means leader of the voiceless. It was aimed at a paper for Dalits and was a Marathi fortnightly, fighting, of course, for their rights and the rights of Dalits in India. Some movement again on the scoreboard. Paras is now at number 1 with 8,849 points, followed by Adit and Aniket. And 16 players have been able to answer 3 questions correct and have streaks. Great. Now, the next question. This Indian newspaper first protested against government censorship with a blank editorial during the emergency. The Times of India, the Indian Express, Hindustan Times, and the Hindu. Great. A lot of people know that it was the Indian Express. So the emergency after Indira Gandhi imposed it, of course, through the president, they basically said that there was a threat to the internal security of the country, and they would not allow any dissent or criticism of the government in the media. And that's when the Indian Express decided that rather than writing something that was false and praising the government, they would have a blank editorial in protest. Adit is now number one after this question, followed by Aniket and Tanushree. And 12 players have been able to answer 4 questions on a streak. Moving on to the next question. This country had the maximum number of journalists imprisoned in 2021. Afghanistan, China, India, or Pakistan? Couple more seconds. The answer is China. It was the country that had the most number of journalists behind bars. Moving on now to the next question. With some movement on the board again, Aniket is now number one, followed by Tanushree, Sneha, Dipankar, and Sandhya. And all of you are really close, just a couple of 100 points here and there. This question is a puzzle question. If you rearrange the options, arrange the languages as per the number of certified publications circulated in India in that language in 2020-21. So you have to arrange Kannada, Hindi, English, and Marathi, starting from the one that had the most number of publications to the one that had the least number of publications in that language. So the correct order is Hindi, Marathi, English, and Kannada. And it turns out that India has a lot of newspapers and other periodicals. That is over 144,000. Only one person has got this answer right, and it is a tricky question. So in Hindi, there are over 16,000 publications. In Marathi, it's over 2,000. English over 2,600. English is 2,400. And Kannada is 1,151. That's the order. So because I'm from IndiaSpend, where we are very, very careful about our facts, I thought I'd give a couple of tips before we announce the winners on how you can recognize whether some news story is reliable and whether it's factual and you can believe what is being written. So whenever you need a read a news story, keep in mind a couple of things. One is, of course, where is it coming from? Is it a news organization you have heard? Is it a news organization that has good journalists, or is it just some website or a blog which you've never really heard about? Is it a news website? Is it a propaganda website? Is it run by specific people and only cover certain issues in a certain light? So always do your homework on the source of the news story. The other thing you should do is you should, when you're reading a news story, keep in mind that journalists, when they're writing a news story, are supposed to be reporting facts that can be attributed to either another source like a survey, or that they've heard something on the ground and are writing about that. So the source should always be mentioned. It can either be a person on the ground who said it, or it should link back to a reliable survey, say a survey done by the government or research by some well-known peer-reviewed academic journal. So always look for those sources. When you read IndiaSpend stories, what we try to do is we try to link back to the source. So if you want to go to the source and check where we are getting our information from, you can do that. And in fact, a lot of the questions that come on India Fact Quiz are often from our stories and from the sources that our story relies on. That's another way of checking misinformation. The other, of course, is whatever you're getting through WhatsApp and social media, take that with a grain of salt, unless you can go to a reliable source and find the same information, and when you can verify the source where it's coming from. A lot of information that comes on WhatsApp is made up. Those messages don't really have any backing. They're just somebody like just any person who's just typing and then sending it across, and people take it as fact. So definitely, even in your family, even in your friends, make sure to question where they're getting their information from, and whether it's from a reliable source or it's from WhatsApp or social media. So these are some handy tips whenever you read anything the next time, or anybody quotes you any facts. Be sure to check where it's coming from. Now we'll see how the scores line up. All right, so on third place is Sneha, who got 8 out of 11 correct with 10,594 points. Second is Tanushri, who also got 8 out of 11 correct with 10,672 points. And in first place is Aniket, who also got 8 out of 11 correct, but could answer them much faster, and so has 10,798 points. Congratulations, Aniket, Tanushri, and Sneha. And of course, all of you will receive the book, which will help you learn a lot more about the media and how to trust it. All right, thank you everyone for being a part today. And do follow IndiaSpend, read our work, and of course, join India.